Welcome to week 3. All right, this week we're moving into relativism. I don't know if I'd mentioned yet, but you should have noticed that your book is not written in a neutral way that most textbooks are written. Most philosophy textbooks are written in kind of a neutral way. Humer is going to go ahead and give you what he believes, and so he's pretty squarely opposed to relativism, especially though of the broad sort that we're talking about this week. Actually, though, by the way, almost every philosopher is against this kind of relativism. It's really only in the more general culture that you'll find relativists of this sort. And so we'll get into why, and you can think through if the vast majority of philosophers are right on this one, or if we're just academics, okay. Let's look at some of the arguments from the discussion boards. By the way, I've got more than one section of Intro to Philosophy, so I'm piecing them together across different boards, but interesting things I found. So there are a couple of arguments that were actually valid, but because they were circular, and so it's worth pointing out that can happen, right? So for example, this one, all dogs have ears, German Shepherds are dogs, therefore they are dogs, right? There's the expected conclusion there is going to be, therefore they have ears. And that would have been valid. That would have been a categorical syllogism. Instead, it was a repeat of premise 2, which is also valid. It's just circular, which kind of makes it uninteresting, right? So a similar one, stealing from a store is wrong. Stealing is a physical act that's frowned upon in our society, so stealing is immoral. The thing is, stealing is wrong and stealing is immoral. Those two sentences mean the same thing, right? So it is valid, but just because it's circular. And the second premise actually didn't do anything to add to the support for the conclusion, because it already was circular. So circularity is one of those things that can sneak up on you like that. Those two might not have felt circular while you're reading them, but that's how that goes. Some other ones that turned out not to be valid, and it's good to think about what makes arguments not valid. By the way, when I made this assignment, I didn't ask you to make a valid deductive argument. I just asked you to make a deductive argument. So just because an argument is invalid on the discussion board doesn't necessarily mean much. But okay, rain comes from the sky. Snow also comes from the sky. Thus, rain and snow are the same kind of thing in different forms. This actually, what's interesting about it, this happens a lot. That sounds like kind of good reasoning. It sounds like an inference to best explanation that's likely to be right, but it's not valid. Because after all, it could be the case that both those things come from the sky, but they're not the same kind of thing. That's possible, right? In our world, in actuality, they are the same kind of thing, but we can't prove it that way. Cats and dogs could be falling from the sky, and they're not the same kind of thing, Another one, getting good sleep is good for your brain. You need your brain to survive, therefore getting good sleep keeps you alive. It's very close to being valid. The problem is good for is not the same thing as like essential, so you'd have to switch out that phrase. Little words can make the whole difference, right? So if the first premise were getting good sleep is absolutely necessary, right, for your brain to survive, for your brain to exist, and you need your brain to survive, therefore getting good sleep keeps you alive, that would work. But otherwise, the same thing would apply to vitamins or whatever. They're good for your brain, but they're not necessary to stay alive. Another one this is an interesting one too. Blankets are soft. People like things that are soft, therefore people like blankets. This one actually is valid. It is valid. But I thought it was interesting to think about that second premise, people like things that are soft. If this is going to be a valid argument, that sentence has to be interpreted in a way that it's all people like all things that are soft. So if that's what the sentence means, then it's a valid argument. But the normal way to interpret that sentence is more something like, most people like most things that are soft, right? And if that's all that sentence means, if it's a generalization, not a categorical law, then it actually is not valid. So this is, you got to watch out for the difference between universal statements and just generalizations. They can sound really similar. Okay, just those are just some thoughts I saw, I had while looking through discussion boards. We're not gonna be able to spend any more time practicing logic, but we will use it in the course, so things will come back up. Let's keep it going.